Hey everybody, it's David Kemp. I'm your host of Highway to Health podcast series. Thank you for being here. I know you guys tune in to hear about the innovations, the disruption that's going on in healthcare. And that's why I do this podcast, is to talk to the companies, the executives, the thought leaders that are making a difference. And if you know anything about my history, my background, my experience, it started in revenue cycle. And so that's why it's near and dear to my heart. The problems are ever present. They're also ever evolving in revenue cycle. And it plays such a big part in our patient community, the experience they have in their healthcare journey. It's also a vital part for our provider community. And of course, the payers play a big part in the revenue cycle as well. So it's this great intersection of the entire healthcare spectrum. And today I'm honored to have AGS Health on the show, where we get to talk about, what we're seeing in revenue cycle now, where providers are putting their big bets in 2023 and beyond, and then where we see revenue cycle going in the near and distant future. And I'm honored to have the Senior Vice President of Marketing at AGS Health, Christina Cusimano. Christina, welcome to Highway to Health.
Great. Thank you, David. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. You and I got connected a while ago. We have many mutual friends. Feels like I've known you forever. And you guys at AGS Health, really all of revenue cycle is doing some tremendous work. So I'm excited to share some of these things with our listeners. And we'll get into work and revenue cycle here in a minute. This has become kind of a tradition of mine. So I hope you don't mind me asking. But we're in healthcare. So I like to hear how executives in healthcare have implemented strong habits in their life, in their daily routine, to stay healthy, mentally, physically healthy, so they can perform at really high levels. So share with us a few of the habits that you've built into your daily routine.
Well, this is probably the hardest question that you're going to ask me, isn't it? But it is a good one. It's a good one. So I could say all the right things, eating healthy and exercise. The reality is I do try to do that, and I like good food. So that's a little bit of a problem. And I do work probably too much. But in all honesty, I do my best to carve out at least 15 minutes to an hour every single day. I have a 13 and a half yellow lab, so I like to take him for a walk. And I found that, I like this time because I don't feel guilty about stepping away. It allows me to reflect on, a lot of things, appreciate nature. Fresh air is always good. And not only is it physically healthy, but it allows me to spend time with my best friend. It gives me, puts my mind at rest and takes me away from that constant barrage of emails and instant messages. And, I find that being constantly connected isn't healthy. So, the walk for me, it just allows me to, completely disengage. And I do find that it helps me re-energize so I can tackle all the rest of the items that I have on my to-do list. Plus, dogs are therapy, and mine supports me all day. He's actually under my desk as we speak. And he's here with me every day. So taking him for a walk makes me feel like I'm saying thank you to my work partner.
Well, good. Yeah, you need that support system. And I do know that you work too hard. So the walk is good. I recently took a vacation with all my family, and we went somewhere where I didn't have any cell phone reception at all. And for the first few hours, I spent way too much time trying to figure out a way to reconnect and maybe a Wi-Fi, a hotspot, something. And then I finally realized, with some encouragement from my wife and my kids, that it's okay.
It is.
to step
and then
away.
Once you do it,
once I accepted that, you're right. Disconnecting is a huge part of staying mentally fresh. And so a walk every day is maybe something that I should implement too, just to get away.
Absolutely.
We're coming off our busy season, Christina, where, we're in all these different trade shows. We're at, whether it's, the symposium out in Vegas that just ended, we've got Vive and HIMSS coming up. with that in mind, you're probably with executives of your partners, of your providers. You're probably getting an inside look on, the biggest topics, the biggest trends in revenue cycle. Where do you see, these providers paying the most attention right now, and where are they placing their big bets moving forward?
Another great question. I think, from what we're seeing and hearing, healthcare organizations, they're going to face these challenges, right, in 2023, same as 2022, maybe even increasing with, recessionary pressure, continuing high inflation rates, labor shortages, and the endemic with COVID-19. And, these healthcare organizations, operating margins, they're under constant scrutiny. And every organization, all shapes and sizes, they're feeling the burden and the pressures. And it's really limiting everybody's ability to reinvest in their operations and maximizing eligible reimbursements and growing revenue. It's never been more critical and top of mind for executives and our customers, to be honest. It's all you hear and it's all you read about in every healthcare publication. So what we're encouraging healthcare executives to focus on is, just look for opportunities and invest with clear, demonstrable ROI. So for the revenue cycle, this means adoption of automation and technology where appropriate, and then possibly even outsource to mitigate those labor shortages and wage growth. And outsourced vendors, they have the ability to scale with demand. So finding a strategic partner to help healthcare organizations identify the right combination of the two, meaning services and technology, it's going to be essential. And frankly, sometimes maybe the only option these days with labor costs being so high.
Labor cost is high, and what I think people outside of the healthcare industry don't recognize is how slim of a margin that these providers are operating on. And so every percentage point that margin shrinks, I mean, you're talking about most providers working off, 6 to 8% profit margin or operating margin. And so if their staff is costing them incrementally more, that's 6 to 8% gets even closer to zero, which puts, our healthcare system under tremendous stress and at risk of not being able to deliver the care, the services, keeping their doors open, frankly, to the patient population that needs care the most.
Exactly. And, I think we're going to only see that continue. And I think the trend will be for these organizations to really seek out where they can combine the right technology and the right services to be successful.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that goes to the people, process, technology, triangle that has to come together for these providers to work efficiently, timely, accurately, all of those things. It can't just be technology nowadays. It's got to be, a platform of solutions that include the process piece and the people piece. And there's some great companies out there that, like AGS Health, that are bridging that gap. Let's talk about the provider for a minute. The provider in healthcare, the buyer in healthcare has to be the most educated buyer of any industry. They have to be. The money means too much. We've already talked about the margins. And so they're looking, they're not just looking for a solution to their problem. They're educating themselves on all the solutions that could potentially solve that problem before they even enter the sales cycle most of the time. How are you seeing, providers educate themselves, and how are you seeing solutions provide that education so that the provider can make the right choice at the right time?
Well, they should attend our webinars if they haven't. No, but
there you go. Brad, I like it. They could attend this podcast
yes, exactly. No, but seriously, I think a true partnership is a collaborative process with shared learning, and strong partnerships offer strategic guidance and industry insights. And we learn from our customers, And what we do at AGS, we don't walk into an opportunity acting like we have all the answers, because we don't. And we know that no two revenue cycles operate in the same way. So we go in with the intent to understand the people, the process, and technology, to your point, of those that we partner with, and we go through an extensive discovery process before coming to any conclusions about how we might be able to assist. And what I think is important for a vendor partner to bring to the table is deep expertise and extensive experience in their field. In the last decade, we've worked with some of the nation's largest hospitals and health systems to build that expertise across our organization. We work with over 100 IDNs, and I can say with 100% confidence that we really understand the challenges and the situation that providers run into. And what we do is we take our learnings from those client engagements and we assess with real-time data analytics to make sure we can determine the best path forward on what their goals are. And it's more of a customized and a collaborative approach that works well for us and our clients, especially when it comes to technology-enabled services. Each customer and opportunity is unique. And what we do is we offer those insightful resources. And what I'm really proud to say, and because I lead marketing, if you go to our website, we've got a lot of education there. We've got blogs, we've got white papers, webinars. We have a lot of subject matter experts who show up as guest podcasters. They speak at conferences, they conduct educational webinars. And some of what we provide in our educational opportunities, we even offer continuing education credits, CEUs. And as of late, we've had over 1,000 attendees to our educational webinars, which tells me that the market is just chomping at the bit for this type of education. And I'm thrilled that we provide it at no cost. So if you come to our website, if you sign up for one of our webinars, we'll send it to you on demand. But that's really how I think people need to stay educated, is find vendors that you trust and that have good content.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that might be one of the biggest. You touched on the customization of a solution, because no problem is the same. All providers are different, and so your solution has to be tailored to those challenges. When you have a mixture of people, process, technology as a part of your solution set, that allows you to be more customizable. And I think that's where the industry, especially in revenue cycle, has shifted over the last 10 years, where there's not a blanket solution anymore. And so you have to go to market to these providers with not just education, but also a tailored solution to uniquely, address those challenges. How else have you seen revenue cycle change over the last 10 years? We've come a long way, and you guys are a part of a solution and a part of a community that has brought this part of the industry forward. What's the biggest change between now and 10 years ago?
Well, this question makes me feel really old because 10 years seems like yesterday in some ways. And I've been doing this for a long time, 3 decades to be exact. And I know I don't always like to admit that. I started when I was really, really young. But I would say,
like elementary, that's when you must have started in your
yes,
elementary years
absolutely.
for 30 years.
Yes, you're my new best friend,
Yeah.
David. But I would say most notably, the reluctance to offshore has gone away. And I think the pandemic accelerated where and how work could be performed. So not only is offshoring more acceptable, but manual processes are no longer standard. So, goodbye to paper and spreadsheets. And there's a lot more reliance on software and system integration between different phases of the revenue cycle, and it's definitely become more common. So, the other thing I would say is just broader cultural shifts. They've also had an impact on the revenue cycle over the last decade. So the desire to improve health equity, that's been top of mind for a lot of organizations, and it's led many provider organizations to prioritize and operationalize and capture coding is a good example for social determinants of health, SDOH data, to support more equitable care within their communities. And, I would say also the move from fee for service to value-based care is more prevalent. And that's really increased also the value of accurate coding. The other thing that is, I would say, top of mind for us is the patient experience. So if you, in relation to the revenue cycle, that comes across as price transparency, and the term integrated financial clearance didn't exist or have as much focus. And being able to implement processes and technology to determine a patient's ability and likelihood to pay, along with using information that's tailored to the unique needs of different patient populations, including eligibility for financial programs, patient counseling, payment plans. That's a very hot topic right now. And if you get the information up front and you get it accurately, your chances of getting reimbursed and paid, right, goes up tremendously. And you're not having resources taking the time to chase it. And I always found it interesting in my very early years of my career. And back then I was implementing financial and practice management systems and visiting clients. They would put the least educated people at the front desk. And that's the most important job at any healthcare organization. That's really where the rubber hits the road. So there's that. And there's a whole other things that we can talk about, between regulatory scrutiny and compliance and employee retention and telehealth. There's a lot of other things we can, go on and on about. And I'm happy to share my thoughts on those as well.
Well, it's been a really positive trajectory over the last 10 years. One of the things that you talked about was the focus on patient access and improving accuracy early on in the revenue cycle. That's been something that has been talked about for a long time. But what I think, and you touched on, over the last 10 years, we've seen not just the awareness of the importance of that role and of that part of the revenue cycle, but also the implementation and tactical execution of gathering the right information, gathering it timely, so that everything that follows that process, everything that follows that first initial step is more seamless, and there's less manual intervention, and everybody's happier. The provider has the data they need, which means they can process the claim more quickly, more accurately, which means the payer pays more accurately and more timely, which means, it's just a domino effect that even ties back to the patient experience, because now they're not getting this surprise bill in the mail that they didn't expect and weren't prepared to account for. And I think that the focus on, the implementation of strategies at that point in the revenue cycle has made a huge difference.
There's just so many more hurdles for providers than there were 10 years ago. Payers have more rules on pre-authorization because they're trying to keep premiums from dramatically increasing. And this really significantly increased the administrative burden and denial volumes for organizations. And so the front end of the revenue cycle is growing in importance, and it also impacts that patient experience.
All right. So you went there. So I was hoping we would go there. Give me your perspective on the provider and payer dynamic.
I guess I would say as healthcare has moved from a fee for service to a value-based care model, the financial risk has rapidly shifted from payers to providers, and payer rules and contracts, they're changing a lot more quickly. And it makes it really difficult for providers to remain current on each payer's unique policies. Everybody's got a different policy. Every payer has a different policy. And this, of course, has escalated tensions between two parties, creating competing priorities and incentives. So from our standpoint, really the only path forward is to help these providers deliver clean claims, effective communication, and improved collaboration with payers. And, we want first pass reimbursements. That's really what we're about. So that's kind of how I interpret the payer versus provider dynamic. It is a dynamic, and it's something that we, consistently work with our customers on. And again, I think just, clean claims, avoiding denials, getting the information up front accurately is so important.
Yeah, I remember, when I first started in revenue cycle, the big focus was on, your clean claim rate. And the way that was defined was, how many claims went through the scrubber, your EHR, whatever, without manual intervention, right? Now, and you described it a little bit just there, the focus has moved to more of, first pass payment rate, reimbursement rate. It's great that the claim went through without being touched, but did it pay? Was it denied? And what's that percentage look like? What's that ratio? Because at the end of the day, dollars in the door is what matters. And if it's denied, the patient's experience suffers. And then you get into all this financial toxicity that patients are having to deal with. And so that first pass payment rate or reimbursement rate really is the metric that seems to matter right now.
Yeah, and I think, coding, obviously that's something where we do very well at, but the transition from ICD-10 and the level of specifics and details in coding, that's also transform revenue cycle. As you said, it's a lot more complicated. So coding and coding accurately is also very important.
How do you, I guess the best way to put this is, what would you do to encourage providers to gain some leverage in that dynamic with the payer? Because the payer does have a lot of the power right now in determining, regulations, contract structures, payment rates. What can the provider do, if anything, to balance that level?
Yeah, and it goes back to what we talked about, first pass reimbursements. It's all about checking all the boxes and being as detail oriented as possible. We know the top reasons for denials. We have real-time data and analytics to track performance and perform further root cause analysis. And if we enable providers to proactively address the most common sources of tension, then they can maximize their reimbursement and grow their revenue in line with the policies of payers. I always tell everybody, specifically our sales team, that what we offer today at AGS Health is a salesperson's dream. And why? It's because we could have a prospect or a customer come to us and they could say, we need 100 FTEs within our revenue cycle. That could be on patient access, it could be coding and documentation, it could be patient financial services. So we can walk into that organization. They think they need 100 FTEs. And we can go in, do our due diligence via a discovery and consultative analysis and use data and determine that they don't actually need 100 FTEs. They may need a fraction of those FTEs. And better yet, with our technology, we can automate much of that work with our digital workers. We call them digital workers, but it's really automation and leveraging AI and technology. So we're saving cost, making our customers more efficient, and helping them grow their revenue, not just contain it, but helping them grow that. And an example of how or where we at AGS have helped customers, and one example is cash acceleration. And our service experts have helped customers clear large backlogs of aging AR within months. And it's really resulted in some game-changing cash flow improvements, ranging between 10 million to 18 million in under a year for some of our customers. And again, when you take that combination of technology and services and the expertise and the analytics, that's the type of that's the type of system and tools that we use as we go and we analyze our customers.
I was talking with a provider recently, asking them similar questions, getting their perspective, their side of things. And And the guy I was talking to said something pretty profound. He said, I can't be a body shop anymore. And he wasn't meaning like a, automotive body shop. He was meaning we can't throw bodies at the problem anymore. In the old days, or traditionally, it was like, well, we need more people to work this backlog, or we need more people to answer these phones, or it was always a people solution. Well, the talent's hard to find now, and the talent that is there that you can find is very expensive now. And so that puts a strain on the financial situation. They really need to be able to scale the talent that they have. And I think that speaks to, exactly your answer right there is, instead of being a body shop, 100 FTEs, it needs to be a combination of the people that we have, maybe a few more, plus improved process, plus improved technology to do what we need to do with the same or fewer resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see that happening. And I think the best thing is that, again, what we do is not every customer is the same. They're all very different. So we go in and we customize that approach, and we really sit down to understand where we could actually automate, because it's different in every customer. And we find things that we never thought we could automate, and we actually do it. So, that's just an example of how AI is changing our world.
Yeah. And, I think that's another example of how we've changed over the last 10 years. I think the traditional mindset of not embracing technology or embracing innovation or automation has gone away in a big part. I think out of necessity, these providers are starting to say, okay, we know we need to start to embrace, leading edge technology because they have to. And so the traditional no of, well, we're not going to do this because it's not the way we've done it in the past. I think providers more and more now are starting to say, okay, we know we need to change what's out there that could help us, and not necessarily taking a chance on new technologies and new solutions, but being more open-minded about the possibilities that are available.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about the last 10 years. We've talked about where we are now. Look out onto the horizon. If we're on this open road journey to improved revenue cycle, where do you see revenue cycle going, the next 5-10 years? Where do you see taking place for our providers and our solutions moving forward?
Yeah, and I think we're just at the very early stages of, automation and AI, and that's going to continue to play a critical role. And honestly, early adoption of these systems is going to put providers at an advantage, and technology can help drive organizational efficiencies. And if you leverage automation and AI, this is where providers can eliminate all those tedious and repetitive tasks. Again, things that they didn't even know that they could do. And that could be data entry, it could be manipulation, it could be extraction. And what can't be automated can be supplemented with highly trained and educated professional services, and you can augment your internal teams. But I do think that offshoring the revenue cycle is going to continue, partly to help reallocate resources to address these administrative demands. And in many cases, again, these healthcare organizations, they don't have any other options. We're continuing to see doors of large systems, large healthcare systems, hospitals closing. And we're seeing that and the increase of requests that we've had, the RFPs that we've had, but there's really not many other options to keep costs down. And I think we're going to see more of that as we move forward. I also think that we're going to probably see more patient-centric payment models. I do think that that's a trend that's not going to go away. It's starting, and I think we'll see that continuing in the future. And I also think, because we've got all these advancements in technology, we're going to see an increased use of data and analytics. The opportunities for AI, again, I think they're countless. We're seeing applications of it in terms of assessing and helping with automating tasks and parts of the revenue cycle, like I said, we didn't even know were possible. And that often happens during our discovery process, where an organization may not even consider or think something could be automated. So it's a learning experience every time, and you really have to think outside of the box. And that's what our teams do. They've been, innovative. And one example, we have a customer where we automated 98% of their penny adjustment processes, and we resolved a backlog of more than 100,000 outstanding write-offs in just 4 months. And that would have cost the organizations several $100,000 over the next, several years. So just their penny things that they just would have wrote off, there was an easy couple $100,000, over a span of a couple of years that we were able to help them with.
And every dollar counts in this world. So that's huge. Yeah, I think you guys and others are playing a huge part in, because innovation is happening so quickly now, that the provider oftentimes is looking to you to tell them what's possible and tell them, educate them, guide them, give them a tool to be the hero. As they don't necessarily have the power right now to change, their current state. But because we have experts, because we have those that, get to see revenue cycles from across the country and have access to tools from around the world that are very innovative and scalable, you can guide them to the solution. You can guide them to success. And I think that's where providers' solutions really come together for a great partnership. And I've seen that over and over again. I'm sure you have too.
Yes, we have. Absolutely.
So what do you, for our listeners, if they could walk away understanding one thing about the revenue cycle, about the current challenges, things that are out there that help solve those challenges, if you could summarize these things down to one point that you want them to remember and walk away understanding, what would that one thing be?
I think it's to fight the natural inclination to make drastic cutbacks out of fear of a recession. We're all thinking it's a recession, but I would say, really think about not cutting back. And our CEO, Patrice Wolf, she talks a lot about this, but this is a time for bold action. And that means understanding where our opportunities for growth are, and where the, organization can grow. And I mentioned earlier that the revenue cycle, it isn't an expense line item. And if it's optimized, it generates profit. And if you engage the right revenue cycle partner, that to me, that's going to be critical moving forward. And over the years, we've added, technology, and that puts us at a great advantage, specifically at AGS, over tech companies, because we have deep expertise with respect to the revenue cycle operations. And we know that technology, if it's not closely monitored, it can really create unintended disruptions in the revenue cycle. So I would just say, if organizations are looking to outsource their revenue cycle, look for a strategic partner, and that's key, strategic partner that has the experience and aligns to their goals. And again, one of the things that we do at AGS Health is, we deliver that flexibility and efficiency to help organizations make sure that they can make the bold decisions to help them drive top line growth while protecting their bottom line. And I would say, again, even though these large organizations are having these financial challenges, there are really good solutions in the market today, whether that is a service provider, technology provider, or both. And we like to say we provide technology with a human touch, and that's to help health systems focus on what's most important for their part of their business. And we think what's most important for them is caring for the health of their patients, patients first. And that's our newly branded tagline, revenue to realize your vision. And I wouldn't be in marketing if I didn't share our tagline and our mission of, taking the heavy lift and the stress off of our customers, again, so they can do what they do best, and we want them to focus on patient care.
Wow, that's well said. And in times of challenge in tough times, because whether it's because of the economy or changes in regulation or, a pandemic like COVID, in those tough times, we rely on the community that we're a part of. And I'm proud to say Revenue Cycle is a community that helps each other. And AGS is a good example of that. And when I see providers and partners coming together to find the right solution for the provider, the patient, everybody involved, that's what true healthcare is all about. And so, to your point, to the providers out there, rely on your community. Go to them and lean on them during these times, because I think you'll be more successful. You'll find more paths to prosperity. And AGS, Christina, you guys are a great example of that. Thank you for everything that you're doing for the provider community, for the patient community. And also thank you for being a part of Highway to Health.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure, and really appreciate you inviting me. And if there's anything else I can do to help, or would love to do these again, this was fun. So I appreciate it.
It was fun. And you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, Christina.